At this point, that's just such an iconic sound, isn't it? Not to mention that music. Over the past few days then, I've had hands-on experience with Homeworld 3, the upcoming classic RTS sequel. I was recently contacted by Gearbox Publishing, who asked if I'd like hands-on experience with the game as a part of a sponsored event. So this video is sponsored, and if you'd like to know more about Homeworld 3, please do check out those links in the video description. So what you're looking at on screen right here is a new skirmish mode for Homeworld. This mode is called War Games, and it supports 1 to 3 players cooperatively. Now, in case you're wondering, no, Homeworld hasn't turned into a full-on skirmish mode game. There is still a full story-based campaign, and I believe by the time you've watched this video, you'll be aware of the trailer for that. So, War Games is an additional new mode that will hopefully prolong the lifespan and replayability of the game as a whole. Now, in my playthrough session, I had a match with strategy YouTuber Pravus, as well as one of the developers from Blackbird Interactive, the studio behind the game. So this was a great primer for me to get into the skirmish matches, and Pravus really is an exceptional strategy player. I'd highly recommend watching his videos, and hopefully by the time you get to see this, his Homeworld 3 video will also be available. I also wanted to point out, however, that personally I'm very much a solo player. As many of you who have watched this channel will know, I tend to play games on my own a lot. So whilst I definitely really did enjoy the multi-session matches, the multiplayer cooperative matches, I also wanted to test out just how far I could get whilst playing this War Games skirmish matches on my own. So that is going to be the primary focus of this particular video, but do keep in mind there is other YouTube videos out there on Homeworld 3 and War Games that will almost certainly be focusing on the multiplayer aspects. That means between all of the videos you should get a well-rounded perspective. So what we've got right here is the first map, and each time you play you'll have one of a variety of different mission types. On this particular case, my objective is an escort mission. On other occasions it may be to hold a specific area, target zone, or sometimes even eliminate as many enemies as possible. So right here I've built a very small fleet of ships. I've got 18 interceptors and a handful of frigates, as well as a few bombers as well. The larger ship that you can see right there near the centre of the screen, the one selected, is my carrier. Now in the War Games mode you don't actually get to use the iconic Homeworld mothership. Instead you're restricted here to the carrier, but nonetheless you have more or less much of the functionality. You can conduct research, you can build ships of all different sizes, and of course you can upgrade those ships as well. What's more, your carrier is actually pretty powerful on its own, and you can move it around as well as get it engaging within combat. But that said, you must protect it at all costs. If it comes under prolonged fire, it will be destroyed. So as you can see here, I've completed the objective for this particular map. Once the objective is complete, you'll see the Initiate Hyperspace button appear. That's been there for a while at this point. However, before I used it, I wanted to try and gather as many resources as I could before heading on. Now, if you're in a cooperative mode here and you've got other players along with you, any one of those 3 players can initiate the hyperspace for everyone else. It only requires one person to actually press that button. Also, interestingly, you don't need to dock all your ships before the carrier jumps. Instead, the carrier will jump away on its own, but all the ships will be present and accounted for when you arrive at your destination. This then is the second map, and it's a very nice contrast graphically to the previous maps. Some lovely lighting effects going on here and some great coloration. You'll also notice the environment, these super mega structures that litter the area, most of them partially or completely destroyed. And this environment will play a big part of the game. Select a unit and maneuver it towards some of this terrain, and they will either use it for cover or else use it to try and sneak past enemies. And the units for the most part seem to be able to pretty much intelligently decide how to treat the cover based on the context of the situation. At least that's the impression I've got. Now right here I'm collecting some resources. I've got my resource collectors going up there to the little orange nodes. You'll also notice that I can choose some artifacts. Every time you complete a mission and move on to the next map, you can select some upgrades. And this brings me on to one of the perhaps most important parts about the War Games mode. It's essentially, to all intents and purposes, a roguelike. That means you can upgrade your fleet, you can upgrade your ships, build new ships, gain artifacts, all the rest of it, and these will carry over with you from map to map. However, the moment you die, you will lose all of this and be sent back to the first map again. However, there's a very important point about this. As you play through, you will accumulate XP. The XP allows you to level up, and in turn, that will allow you to unlock different starting conditions. This could mean additional resource units at the start, allowing you to construct your fleet that much earlier and that much quicker. Or it could mean you begin the game with already upgraded ships. There's a whole range of different starting options here, and you can see how they'll get unlocked as you progress through the game, increasing the amount of XP you've gained. So yeah, the way all of this with Wargames is structured will certainly lend a lot to replayability. On this pre-release version of the Wargames build I was playing on, there was just 3 maps available, just enough for us to get a good feel of what it's all about. The final release though of Homeworld 3 will of course have the full campaign, in addition to a whole bunch of maps, I'm not sure exactly how many, for the Wargames mode. Now one thing that was clear, one thing that was explained to me by Blackbird Interactive, is that they will be releasing additional Wargames maps as DLC components. This is one of the ways that they're going to monetize the game in addition to its initial purchase price. Now, overall I don't think this is a particularly bad move, because it does show that Blackbird and Gearbox are going to be supporting the game going forward. What's also interesting is that the developers explained to me that there won't be microtransactions in the form of cosmetics, so don't expect to find the game fully monetized to the extreme. It means you won't be expected to pay tons of money on this game. What's more, if you do like cosmetics, all of that is going to be fully supported by the game and will be entirely free. As you can see here, we can customize the emblem on our ship as well as the hull colors, and I'm sure this will expand only further once modders get their hands on the game. So yeah, Homeworld 3 does fully support modding, and in fact the team have gone into partnership with mod.io, and that means mods should be all the easier to actually implement into the game for people who love creating that stuff and who love using it. Now moving on to some discussions about the game itself. It follows much of the traditional Homeworld format, so resource unit collection and fleet building are all important. Each map has a limited amount of resources, but this can be shared between all players. So if you're just on your own, you're going to have most of it to yourself. If there's 3 of you, it will need to be shared. But either way, collecting the resources is a little bit of a risky business for your resource collectors, as quite often they will be harassed by the enemy. This means you'll need to have a protection crew around them, or at least keep a very close eye on your resource collectors at all times. In terms of fleet construction, this all happens through your carrier. You can see that on the right hand side of the screen. Here we can build from a selection of fighter-sized ships, so recons, interceptors as well as attack bombers. We've also got a corvette in the form of a railgun corvette, and then a whole selection of different frigates. The type of frigates you build will really depend upon the type of fleet you want to construct. For me personally, on this particular play session, I wanted a mix of frigates that could deal heavy damage to large units, as well as frigates that could deal damage to fighters. So I went for a mix of iron frigates, as well as a number of assault frigates. Now equally, you could have some torpedo frigates as well, and suppressor frigates. These seem to do a similar job, but they do so in a different way. And just like the original games, Homeworld 3 also has support frigates. These essentially heal your other ships. They can't heal fighters, but they will shoot beams at your frigates, corvettes, and even your carrier that will heal the hull over time. Also, you may have noticed during this playthrough that I have been using a variety of different fleet formations. These again are very much like the original games. You have claw formations, sphere formations, warp formations, and many others besides, and these all help with the tactics in your combat. We can also have different stances. We can set the ships to neutral, we can set them to aggressive or passive, and this generally will change their approach to how they fight the enemy. Make them aggressive and they will attack the enemy at all costs no matter what. Make them passive and they will never engage the enemy, so you really do have a lot of control here. That said, old timers to the series may well notice that the old options of offensive and evasive manoeuvres do seem to be missing. Although that said, the stances of aggressive, passive or neutral do seem to serve a similar functionality. And also, for those wondering, yes, the game does still feature the tactical overview. Press the spacebar and you will zoom out to this tactical screen, which will give you a great overview of the entire battlefield. So there we have it, a first look at Homeworld 3's new mode War Games. So far, from what I've played, it certainly is a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing more when the game releases in February 2024. Homeworld 3 will be available on both Steam as well as the Epic Games Store, and it will be priced at $59.99. Do check out again those links in the video description where you can find out a whole load more. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.